Ugg here from Two Salt, and today I want to show you how to tie the squidgy. The squidgy is a fun little chironomid pattern that I like to use in stillwater. It's got a dark body, really slender profile, and it's got these gill tufts up in the front which induce a lot of strikes when I fish this thing on ponds, lakes, and reservoirs. Great little pattern. I hope you enjoy this video. Next, let's take a look at how to spin one of these up. Okay, so you're going to want to put a hook in the vise, and this is a Tiemco 200R nymph hook, and to it you're going to add a bead, and this is a black nickel bead. It's the 7/64th. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying that. Bead from Cyclops, and this bead has a narrow end and it has a tapered end. So there's a tapered end, there's the narrow end. I don't know if you can see that through my fat fingers, but slide it over the hook with the tapered end first, and it'll slide right over the eye of that hook. So we got the taper going back towards the bend of the hook, and the smaller opening is facing up towards the eye of the hook. And then just slide that thing out of the way. And then you can cast on, and I'm using a black uni thread 6/0, and I want to cast on just right behind the eye. And I'll put that on there like so, and then cut the tag end off. Now advance this back up the bead, or up the hook shank here, towards the eye, just a little bit behind. And our next material to go on is this sparkle emerger yarn, and it comes on a little hank here, and so just peel some of that material off of the hank and cut it loose. And you know, here I got way more than I need, but I'll just like split this in half, and then it'll be pretty good. Yeah, so about something like that. And then I want to tie this on the side of the hook, so I'll turn that like so, and then I'll do kind of a loose wrap, hopefully just to capture it. And then I can move this one over to the other side, and I just kind of want to figure eight this on there, you know, somewhat like so, so that you get a little bit on each side. It's almost like tying up like a merkin crab, in order to get that yarn on, you know, equally on both sides of the fly. Let me do one more on that side, like so, and then I can so it should look something like that when you're done. At this point you can actually even cut those loose, and so you're going to want to cut them, grab all that material there, about 1/8 of an inch, you know, something like that. Get this guy, cut him off about like that, and then I just want to build up a little body right there, but I don't want to build it up too much. So at this point I'm going to stop, and I'm going to just whip finish this right behind right behind that material. Just put a nice little whip finish on there. And then cut that loose. And I like to do a little bit of resin at this point. So that's about what it's looking like. And so I'm going to put some Deer Creek UV resin on there and fine. And that'll really lock in those threads and everything. So I'm going to put a little bit on my bodkin here, and I'm just going to dab it right on there and hit the underside to just try and lock all that stuff in there real good. And I can slide the bead forward and seat that bead right where I want it. Gonna compress it against that little head that I made there, and then hit it with the UV light to cure that resin. And that should hopefully hold that bead just right in position where we want it. Alright, so cast back on again behind the bead with your thread. Cut off the tag. And that bead gets seated a little goofy. There we go, that's better. And then I'm just going to advance that thread in touching wraps down the shank of the hook. Pretty good onto that bend. Careful you don't hit that point like I always do. And I want to get it just onto that bend a little ways, and then I can return back to the head of the fly, again using touching wraps until I get to behind the bead there. And once I get to the bead, I can do some wraps up inside that taper, and that'll help lock that bead off in the exact spot that I want it. And you can kind of feel like when the thread's getting in there real nice, and it'll just hold that bead right where you want it. It's actually still inside of there, so that's pretty good right about there. So at this point I'll just go down the body one more time, just building it up. I don't want to build it up a lot. Yeah, just something like that. And then return touching wraps back up to the bead. And then once you get right about there, you want to do a dubbing loop because we're going to do a little dubbing brush. So to do the dubbing brush, I'll pull off a little bit of thread here, about 4 inches, go back around the hook, wrap it around a couple times, and then I can lock that off. And I like to transfer this to my pinky finger and then hold it upright, and I'm going to use gravity to hold that material in there. So I'm using Peacock Ice Dub for the dubbing, and I just want to pull a little clump of it off. That's probably even way too much, but something about like that, and I can just take off some of this material and just stack it in between the threads there, like so. And then I like to pinch it off, and then I can take my finger and kind of spin it around a few times. Oops, my finger slipped out of there. And that'll help hold that material in there while I grab my tool. And this is my tool that I use for spinning up these dubbing brushes. It's got 2 little shepherd like hook ends, and I just want to grab the thread with those hooks, and then I can start spinning this tool, and it'll wind up that dubbing material into a nice little brush. And you don't want to go too crazy spinning this material up because you can break the thread if you get it too wound up. But something about like that, and then take your brush and just kind of comb out those fibers trying to get them to sort of stand out and not be right in there on the core. You want them to come out perpendicular to that brush. So something about like that. I'll grab it with my hackle pliers, and then I can cut this loose from the tool and set the tool aside. Okay, next I want to wind this brush around the fly here, and as I do so I want to just kind of palmer those fibers back as I do so, and I don't want to build up too much of a body behind that bead, so I'm going to stop about there and then cinch that down, capture that, and then cinch it down with a couple 3 wraps, and then a couple behind the bead. And now I can cut that material loose. This is a great time to whip finish that fly. So grab your whip finish tool, and right behind the bead there, do about a 6-turn whip finish. And then I like to just crank those threads down in there if I can, by pulling tight and really compress those wraps, and then cut it loose. Okay, so at this point you just want to pull that dubbing material away. Let me get this off of there, clean that brush up just a little bit. And gently, I don't want to run the brush against that thread body, and mar it up too much, but I just want to stand those fibers up, much like a peacock feather. And then I can cut those off, and I like to cut them off pretty darn close. Something about like that. Really not much bigger than the bead. And I can just kind of go around this and just keep whacking material off as I do. Something about like that. And if you'll have some pretty wild fibers in there, and you'll have to get in there with the scissors and clean them off, but that's kind of the idea. And the reason I like this dubbing material better than the natural feather is that it's very durable. You can go through a lot of fish with this fly. So lastly, we just want to put a little bit more of that UV resin on the thread wraps there where we did the whip finish, and that's really going to make this fly pretty bomb proof. So I just want to get that in between the bead and that dubbing and just kind of coat those thread wraps, and it'll sort of build up a little bit there too between the dubbing and the bead, and that's good. I want it to sort of be continuous and not have like a gap there. So once I get a bunch of that in there, I can zap it again with the light, and that'll cure that resin, and it'll also kind of show me where some of those wild fibers are that I need to think about getting rid of. So there was a couple more I could see there, and so I'll just get rid of those guys about like so. Alright, so that is the Squidgy, a great little chironomid pattern, very slender. It's got a bead, and it gets down there to where the fish are, and hopefully you'll catch a lot of fish using this pattern. If you liked this video, please click subscribe on my channel, and that way when I upload new fly tying videos and videos on instructional videos on fly fishing, you will hopefully get to check them out. Okay, thanks.